The MMA world focuses its Sauron-like gaze on Miami this weekend for an absolutely incredibly stacked card on paper. UFC 299. It is massive, guys. So massive that there's even been a lot of talk about whether UFC 299 is actually a better card than UFC 300. I'm not quite so sure, but today we're going to go through the card fight by fight, compare it to its opposite number on 300, and maybe learn a little bit along the way. I'm Max from MMA On Point. Thank you so much, as always, to our channel Hall of Famers, and this one is the Unfamiliars for UFC 299. First up at flyweight, we have JoJo Wood taking on Marina Moroz. This one's a nice little entree, two very solid ladies with a lot of UFC experience having a wee bit of a downturn in their records of late. Moroz has lost her last two against good competition, but remember, she's had some great wins and performances in the octagon, including beating an undefeated Mayra Bueno Silva, who has gone on to be a legit force at bantamweight. Joanne Wood is 38 years old, which I had no idea, and she snapped her own 3-fight losing streak with a win over Luana Carolina last time out. These are two very tough and capable ladies all around in the cage, and it's a rematch as well, with Moroz actually handing JoJo her first ever career loss back in 2015. Wood is allegedly retiring after this one, but I think she is much better now than she was in their first match. Moroz doesn't go for enough takedowns for me, considering her grappling advantage, and if it stays in the kickboxing arena and she doesn't get enough takedowns here, I do think JoJo has a striking advantage. In the kickboxing and the clinch, I think JoJo takes it, so I'm going to go against the odds here. I will take Joanne Wood by decision. Next up, also at flyweight, we have CJ Vergara taking on Asu Almabayev. You know, when the Kazakhs arrive, it's about to get nasty. Asu Almabayev made his debut in August with a lovely submission win, and he's now riding a 14-fight win streak dating back to 2017. A grappler predominantly, Almabayev's takedowns have a bit of the Khabib about them. He shoots from miles and miles away, but he's so fast and technical with it. He gets in under the hips every time, and his jiu-jitsu is excellent with 9 submission finishes. In his debut in the UFC, he nearly hit a Peruvian necktie, but eventually he did finish in the second round with a rear naked choke. On the feet, for sure, his boxing is a little bit less developed, but from range with low kicks, he is nasty. He's not afraid to throw spinning kicks from the outside as well, because he has no fear of being taken down. Not a crazy power guy, but very athletic, and of course the wrestling is top notch. CJ Vergara we've talked about for each of his UFC fights, a very respectable 4-2 record in the big show, including his Contender Series win, and he's riding a 2-fight win streak into this one. Vergara is a much better boxer than Almabayev for sure, but he's going to have a big speed, wrestling, and grappling disadvantage for me here. He's got to get on the inside and throw hands. If he clips the Kazakh early and puts some damage on it, could go his way, but that might be his only route. I gotta say, Almabayev is a big favorite for a reason here, and barring the intervention of a big right hand, I have to stick with the odds. I'm taking Asu Almabayev by submission. Next up on the prelims at heavyweight, Rebelis de Spain takes on Josh Parisian. An interesting heavyweight fight? Surely not. Those don't exist. Rebelis de Spain is making his debut here, and with only 4 MMA fights under his belt, it is a huge step up to take on a 22-fight veteran in Josh Parisian. But the Cuban is also massive. Literally, he is 6'7", undefeated in the game with 100% first round KOs. He has a cheeky Olympic bronze medal in Taekwondo under his belt as well. Now, let's put a few asterisks on this, because from the way I just described him, he probably sounds like a Dark Souls boss here to take revenge on the UFC. Number one, his Olympic bronze medal. He only went 2-1 in his matches at the games before winning the bronze via walkover because his opponent was injured. Not trying to take away from the fights he did win and how hard it is to get there in the first place, but that is as easy an Olympic medal as you're about to find. For reference, Ronda Rousey's bronze medal in judo saw her win 5 matches and lose just 1. Second, his MMA run so far has been dominant and seen only first round finishes, but of his 4 opponents, only 1 had ever had a fight before, and none of them have fought since. To go from that to Josh Parisian is as big a step up in competition as I have seen since CM Punk went from top rope elbow drops to Mickey Gall. Now, big Josh Parisian is, of course, not exactly the creme de la creme of the division, but he's definitely experienced 6 UFC bouts, 2 Contender Series wins, an Ultimate Fighter showing, and a 10-fight amateur career under his belt. Look, he's not great. Do I think he wins this fight? Probably not. But do I trust a heavyweight with basically no competition not to get KO'd? Definitely not. Someone probably goes to sleep here. Odds are it's Parisian, but who the hell knows? It's a bit of a strange one. Josh is so much better and more experienced than anyone Despain has fought, and he does have the potential to wrestle the big Cuban to the ground and just beat him up. On balance though, I will take Rebelis Despain by a big KO. Now, next up on the prelims at light heavyweight, Felipe Lins takes on Ion Cutelaba. After 2 losses at heavyweight, Lins cut down to 205 and has gone on a bit of a run. 3 wins in a row for the former PFL champion, and despite having 11 fights fall through, gym and only fighting once a year on average, he is very well-rounded and competent, especially amid this kind of wobbly 205-pound division. Speaking of wobbly, Ion Cutelaba is still a complete loony. He has possibly the worst fight IQ in the world, but he hits like a truck, and he is still only 30 years old to Leans is 38. This is a bit of a coin flip for me. I do think Leans has what it takes to dominate in the point fight, but Cutelaba is just going to run at him swinging, and if he connects, we've seen what happens. But I will never pick Cutelaba to win a fight because his decision making is questionable. So I'm going to take Felipe Lins. I'll say he gets it done here by decision. Next up at middleweight, Battle of the Michaels, Michel Pereira takes on Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. This middleweight fight is very similar to the one we just talked about. It is a competent and well-rounded fighter, and Oleksiejczuk taking on a loony who is his own worst enemy in Pereira. The backflipping maniac has definitely started fighting slightly more like a normal human being though, and he's racked up a considerable streak of 6 wins on the trot against good competition. His KO last time out over Andrei Petrosky was incredible. Oleksiejczuk on the other side is coming into his 12th UFC fight, and he still hasn't really found a groove, but since dropping to middleweight, the Hussar has got some nasty finishes with 3 first-round KOs in his last 4 fights. This one's a pick'em too, honestly. I think Pereira has all the physical advantages, and with his new grappling advancements, he probably has a wrestling edge too, but he loves banging it out on the feet, and I think Oleksiejczuk probably has the boxing technique edge. It could go either way. I gotta go with the one with more momentum. I'll take Michel Pereira by KO. Next up at 135, Pedro Munoz takes on Kyler Phillips. Pedro Munoz has only had bangers, and he's gone up against the best at 135 pounds for so long now. 2 of his last 5 opponents are in the main event of this card, and 2 more are absolute legends in Dom Cruz and Jose Aldo. Kyler Phillips, meanwhile, is still running hot with 5 wins and just 1 loss in the UFC, and he does deserve this step up to fight a ranked guy, but he's been really inactive in general, which always makes me wary. 4 fights since 2020, which isn't ideal, but he's only 28 years old. This one should be very fun on the feet. Both of these guys have been in absolute wars and proven they can eat some serious damage while throwing straight back. I think the odds are a bit funny. Munoz getting a little bit disrespected here despite being in a bad run of form. Phillips really hasn't fought anyone remotely as good as Pedro, and it's going to be a huge step up. I don't think anyone's getting finished here, but in a shootout, I think I'm leaning towards the younger and faster guy. So I'm going to take Kyler Phillips by decision. Next up at lightweight, Mateusz Gamrot takes on Rafael dos Anjos. Does it not feel like this fight already happened? Some fight night main event? RDA is 39 years old. He's still managing to hang with the top half of the rankings, but something's gotta give soon. He's been bouncing between welterweight and 155, and he's coming back down for this one, but he hasn't won at lightweight since 2020. Gamrot, the scary nerd, meanwhile, definitely just 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot, even in this log-jammed division, with just 2 losses in his entire career and not slowing down at all. RDA's weakness at the moment is definitely in his counter wrestling and getting stuck on the bottom, and obviously Gamrot is a ridiculously good wrestler with dangerous jiu-jitsu. When RDA's been the hammer, he's been able to sneak a takedown in here and there to win close fights, especially in 3-rounders like this, but against Mateusz, I just can't see that happening. Despite how good and well-rounded RDA is and his incredible fight IQ, I just think Gamrot has the skill set and the physicality to take this one, so I'm going to take Mateusz Gamrot by decision. Next up, Caitlin Sherminada, who you may know as Caitlin Chukagian, takes on Macy Barber. Number 4 versus number 6 at flyweight. These girls are looking to make their case in a newly shaken up division. Sherminada missed weight in her loss last time out, but she's proven she beats anyone who isn't worth a title shot. Her only losses in the past 5 years have been to Manon Fiorot, Valentina Shevchenko, and Jessica Andrade, and she's taken out 5 or 6 title hopefuls in that time. Barber, meanwhile, incredibly is still only 25 years old, and her 5-fight win streak looks really good right now considering the names on it. Both of these girls have made a living getting close decisions recently, and a lot of those decisions have been a bit dubious. Sadly, they can't both do that in this one, unless they draw, which would be hilarious. This one's kind of really hard for me to pick, a complete toss-up. Both of these guys are very well-rounded, and they don't carry any particular danger either in the knockout or in the submission. It's a really bad fight to bet on, but in this scenario, you have to look for little details that might break the deadlock. Macy Barber is 10 years younger. In any fight, that kind of thing makes a difference. I'm going to take Macy Barber here by decision. And your final prelim on the night, heavyweight Curtis Blades takes on Jailton Almeida. Excellent matchmaking this one. Curtis Blades has made a living having good takedowns and ground and pound in a division full of bad grapplers, and Jailton Almeida has been doing the exact same thing, but with a bit more jiu-jitsu flair and submission threat. This honestly might be the best grappling matchup in heavyweight MMA right now. Blades is still only young for a heavyweight, and he carries a lot of power. Obviously, incredible wrestler, one of the most savage ground and pounders in the game, but not the fastest, and he has been on the end of some really bad knockouts in recent years. is. Almeida carries a lot less weight than most heavyweights, being a career 205er for a while there. And this is a massive step up in technical ability for him, but he has been cutting through everyone so easily up to this point. So like I said, good matchmaking. Charlton's striking is his weak suit, same with Blades, but I really do think Blades has the boxing edge. I hate picking heavyweight fights. They're all so random. I want Almeida to continue his run to the top, but I do think Blades is stylistically a terrible matchup for him. I'm going to take Curtis Blades by TKO. So here are the prelims for this card, and yeah, they're very good. There's a couple of fights here that could be a fight night main event. There's an intriguing debut for Despain, and a lot of potential fun to be had, but then you look at UFC 300's prelims, and it's just a no contest for me. Remember, there are still probably a couple of fights to be added, but 4 former champions. Bo Nickel gonna do some violence. Figgy versus Garbrandt is crazy fun. Kayla Harrison's making her debut. Diego Lopez versus Sadiq Yusuf, that fight is so high level. Andrade versus Rodriguez could easily be a fight night main event. And then a throwback for the ages with Jim Miller and Bobby Green. Top to bottom, feels like on paper, UFC 300 definitely has a stronger prelims, even with fewer fights right now. Opening up the main card at bantamweight, we have Petr Yan taking on Song Yadong. This is a cracker. Internet sentiment has completely abandoned Petr Yan among this 3-fight loss streak, but do remember, the 3 guys he's lost to in that run are all world champion caliber. He's still just as scary as he was back when he was legend killing Aldo and Faber. Song Yadong has been needing another fight at this level since his loss to Sandhagen. He's clearly a level above most ranked guys in this division. He's still knocking on the door of title contendership. These guys start so differently. Yan is so slow off the mark, and Song always comes out firing, but they are both just well-rounded guys who prefer to strike on the feet, so we're gonna have a fun, damaging kickboxing match, I reckon. Yan is a slight favorite, which I think is very fair. He's had more experience at a higher level. I think Song's grappling has come on leaps and bounds, so I don't think Petr Yan's gonna have as easy a job stealing rounds with takedowns. So this one's just gonna be a high-paced banger on the feet. If it were 5 rounds, I might give the edge to Yan here, but because it's shorter and he starts so slow, I think I am gonna give the edge here to Song Yadong. I'll say he gets it done by decision. At 170 pounds, Gilbert Burns takes on Jack Della Maddalena. As the level of competition stepped up for JDM, his performances haven't been as dominant, but he is still undefeated in the UFC, getting a big step up now. Gilbert Burns, one of the top 5 on the planet, a big, strong, capable guy with very, very dangerous grappling. JDM's gonna have to make this one a dogfight. Burns is the best grappler he's ever faced, and more than capable of nullifying good strikers with his top game. JDM's 82% takedown defense is solid, but Burns is a much different guy to defend against. It's really hard to tell where this fight ends up taking place, which makes it very hard to pick. So once again, with very little breaking the deadlock, I'm gonna go with the guy with momentum. I'm gonna say JDM gets the knockout. At 170 pounds, Kevin Holland takes on Michael Venom Page. MVP makes his debut in the UFC in a pretty high level matchup here. A lot of folks are gonna be interested to see him in the big show, but I gotta say, I wish it happened about 10 years ago. MVP is 36 years old. Obviously, he isn't showing it much, but his game relies on his athleticism and speed, and those are the first things to go as you get older in this sport. Kevin should wrestle here, but we know he probably won't, especially considering the hype on MVP's striking. Kevin's gonna want to get a piece of that. Again, he should wrestle because his grappling is massively underrated and his submissions are very good, but both of these men have the same goal in this sport: to entertain the fans and try and get cool knockdowns. It's gonna happen on the feet. It should be good fun, but God only knows who wins this, to be honest. So many of these fights are really hard to call, but when you have a guy like Kevin Holland who will voluntarily abandon his A game just for the memes, it makes it even hard. Holland gets a slight edge for competition level, which is fair, but honestly, I have no idea. I'm gonna take Kevin Holland by decision. So before we get to the main and co-main, this is a strong card. It's an excellent card. Another interesting debut for MVP. Burns versus Della Maddalena should crack, and Yan versus Yadong, obviously very high level. But as we look across the UFC 300, guys, wow. Gaethje versus Holloway isn't even co-main event. It's one of the best fights I've ever heard of. Charles Oliveira, as always, is money to watch in a high-level one here against Arman Sarukian. Yuri the Madman Prohatska versus Alex Rakic. Someone's going to sleep there. And the opening fight on the card is Aljo versus Cater. How often does a former champion's rebound fight open a card? UFC 300 is on another level. Now let's break down the last 2 fights on this one. Dustin Poirier taking on Benoit Saint-Denis. That is a banger, oh my god. DP is coming off the big KO loss to Gaethje, and he may be winding the career down, but he's clearly an amazing test for BSD, who has been cleaning house at a much lower level in the rankings for a while now. Dustin is one of the better defensive boxers in the game, and although BSD's recent run has featured scary KOs, he's usually much more of a grappler. His technique on the feet isn't great. He's gotten those KOs with his scary pressure, power, power and cardio rather than technique. Dustin is definitely the better striker, but he's historically struggled with grapplers with good top games. He's also heading into that 35 plus age territory, and Benoit's iron chin isn't going to help matters for DP either. Dustin is one of my favorite fighters ever, and he clearly has a path to victory here if he can keep it on the feet and counter-strike well, but Benoit is going to put him straight on the back foot. He's going to pressure him hard early, and his cardio never runs out. So I think it's going to be a hard night for Dustin. I'm going to take Benoit Saint-Denis. I'll say by submission. The co-main up against it at 300 is Zhang Weili taking on Yan Xiaonan. Now here is where it gets interesting, because as much as I love the history being made in this fight, with two Chinese fighters going head to head for a world title for the very first time, and as much as Weili Zhang is incredible to watch, I think it's going to have trouble drumming up as much love as Poirier versus Saint-Denis. Dustin is always a fan favorite and doesn't know how to have boring fights. And of course, BSD is the up and coming destroyer, so fan expectation for this one is big. 300 has been strong in this comparison up until now, but I gotta give the love to UFC 299 for this fight. And your main event of the evening, a rematch for the gold. Sean O'Malley defends against Marlon Chito Vera. Give Merab the title shot, you cowards. I'm just kidding. Anyway, rematch here after a strange first fight that had a weird finish and made everyone feel a bit odd. Since then, Chito has definitely gotten better and better, but O'Malley has just taken on another level. 5 wins, some huge knockouts, and a big fat gold belt since their last fight say he is the best in the world. O'Malley is going to want to get this one back, prove the last one was a fluke, and Chito, of course, has double motivation because he can cement that original win and become world champion in one night. It's a great fight, this. It's going to play out on the feet. They're so technical in such different ways. Chito was doing a really good job of keeping stances with O'Malley and damaging him with leg kicks. He's going to want to keep doing that and pressing forward. And of course, O'Malley is one of the most natural strikers I've ever seen. In the UFC, he switches stances so effortlessly. If he can get you leaning forward in an open stance, it's just game over. Chito also starts incredibly slowly. He's going to want to pick it up very quickly here so Sean doesn't steal the early rounds. It's a great fight, just really high level. I can't wait to watch it. I am leaning towards the champion. I reckon O'Malley banks some early rounds, holds off the late surge from Chito, and remains the bantamweight champion of the world. And across at UFC 300, the main event is Alex Pereira taking on Jamal Hill, which for all the hate it got, is a great fight. It is. It's probably going to end spectacularly by KO for one of these lads, but it just doesn't feel to the fans that this fight has the power to head a card so massive. And against the star power of O'Malley, the storyline of the rematch with Chito and his only loss, it does feel like 299's main event is more of a big deal than UFC 300. So as you can probably tell from this video, 300 is stacked, but it's not exactly top heavy. Incredible fights from the bottom all the way up, but the main and co-main, especially when compared to UFC 299, have the fans a little bit disappointed. I still think overall 300 is the stronger card though, and 299 of course is still excellent. What do you guys think though? Do you agree or disagree? Abuse me in the comments below, and on Twitter at Max_Randall. Thank you once again to our Hall of Famers. If you want to get in on the action, get some cheeky little bonuses and support the channel, you can hop on there and click the join button. That would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, just like and subscribe and keep watching. Thank you guys, and have a lovely weekend.